It's time for a conceptual aside. This is APIs and endpoints. Big word alert. An API. An API just means a set of tools for building a software application. It's usually other software that's being made available to us in order to help us build software. It stands for Application Programming Interface. And when we talk about an API on the web, what we're usually talking about, the tools that we're usually talking about, are a set of URLs. It's a set of URLs that accept and send data, and only data usually, via HTTP and TCP/IP. So in other words, a URL that you go to that instead of returning a web application gives you back data. And you can send data, send an HTTP request to that URL with data as part of the HTTP request, and then the API will do something with that data. In fact, that URL itself is called an endpoint. Big word alert. An endpoint. When we talk about APIs on the web, an endpoint just means one particular URL that's part of a web API. And sometimes that endpoint, or that particular URL, that particular address, does multiple things by making choices based on the HTTP request headers. So in my HTTP request, I might put my data, but I also might put something in the header, some other name-value pair that has a particular meaning to that API endpoint. Maybe it will give me data with one header and delete the data if I put a different header. So I can reuse the same URL, and there's some logic behind that code that URL causes to run that will look at the HTTP header, like we did with our request object, and make a choice. So that's the idea of APIs and endpoints. And they give and receive data in a particular format, or sometimes multiple formats they'll accept. And the most popular these days is JSON. And that's great because JavaScript is really good at JSON, and we're writing JavaScript in Node.